morning. Good morning. How are you guys? Oh, it's early. It's early. But even though I almost thought about not doing it, I almost feel like we have to this morning. Ooh, let's fix that banner. Okay. All right, guys. So as we discussed, good morning, Jamaica. Hey, Janae. Okay, so here's what we are going to do today. We are going to do a very high level overview of what is happening. As you know, there was I don't know if anybody saw or heard, but there was a very explosive moment that happened Friday in trial on day 2 in regards to this retrial for Ohio versus Jason Meade. Now I will give you a heads up, mods. I'm giving you a heads up. I'm sorry. We are actually live not only on YouTube and Twitch, but we're also live on Facebook. I know that's not what I normally do, but this is not a normal situation. Okay. So here's where I'm coming from. This is what we'll do. We'll do a very high level overview of what has happened so far. So it won't be my normal blow by blow. It'll just be what has happened in testimony so far, what it looks like. Yeah, I did Facebook because there is another situation that's happening in Columbus, Ohio right now. I think you guys saw it, you've heard it, it's went viral where a young lady from Columbus, Ohio had the devil's lettuce in her luggage when she flew to Bali. Bali wasn't playing. Oh, Chaz. Oh, I know you and Cairo are so happy. Sorry, guys. Oh, I'm so excited for you, and I'm so glad he's safe. Okay, fiance. All right, so oh, sorry. Ooh. Okay, so because of the situation that has happened and people are having this big ass debate as to whether or not the devil's lettuce should be, or you should have did your research. At the end of the day, the truth be told, that the devil's lettuce don't get on nobody's plane, don't cross no state lines, plane, train, or automobile. We all know that. Did the person making the mistake? Yes. If you're going to donate, donate. If you're not going to donate, don't. I would rather see think pieces on Casey Goodson Jr., since this is what will affect this county. Let me tell you something. When Jason Meade was originally charged, there were 40 officers in the whole United States. Do you hear me? 40 officers in the whole United States that were on trial for unaliving somebody in the line of duty, right? 40. 5 of them were from Franklin County. Well, what, like 140 something counties in the whole United States? 5 of those 40 that were on trial for unaliving somebody were right there in Franklin County in Columbus, Ohio. Okay. Not only that, since Casey Goodson Jr. was unalived in 2020, 15 others have been unalived by Columbus Police Department since. And we're talking about whether or not you take some flour on a plane. I understand people make mistakes. I understand that people are going to have an opinion, but at the end of the day, I think that at this point we should be pointing at something. We should donate if we're going to donate, agree if we're going to agree, don't donate if you ain't going to donate, and keep going. But if we're going to keep that conversation alive, we should also be talking about Casey Goodson Jr. and what's going on in Franklin County, because at the end of the day, the same kids she's trying to get back to are the kids that have to grow up in Franklin County. Okay, so we should be able to have 2 conversations at once, but we should not be losing sight of one conversation over the other. And so because I am an Ohio girl in an AZ world, I have decided to do something that I don't normally do, which is extend my stream or what I do with you guys over to Facebook, because Facebook doesn't get to see me like this. Okay? Facebook does not know Miss J. What's wrong, Summer? No, Summer. Okay. So what has happened is there are two situations going on in Columbus, Ohio right now. Right now, we know that we have the retrial for the unaliving of Casey Goodson Jr. Remember the 6 shots to the back trial that we all watched together? I had you guys rewatch it with me because we thought we were getting ready to go into the retrial, and then the retrial got delayed. Well, the retrial started on Thursday with opening statements and the field trip to the scene, and then Friday there was some testimony with an explosive moment behind the victim's sister, right? But also during this time, people stopped talking as much about this trial or weren't paying attention to this trial and start talking about this viral, whether or not people think it's a scam or whether or not they should help somebody who is in a situation in Bali, who's also from Columbus, Ohio. So I am encouraging folks from Columbus, Ohio, Franklin County to have 2 conversations at once. Okay. I'm encouraging folks to walk and chew gum at the same time, because just because one thing has happened, has been a little sensationalized and been talked about and is going viral, make both things viral, because at the end of the day, one is very detrimental to the county and the city as a whole. Now, because I don't normally go live over there, few housekeeping rules that most of the folks here already know, but we'll go over them. We do not have yes men over here. A weekend, yes, Mel was live yesterday. I talked to her all night Friday night before she went live. Okay, so first things first, we do not have yes men over here. All opinions are welcome. You can say whatever you want to say. It's just how you say it. We will lead with love and we will be respectful, or you will go. Okay. So at the end of the day, I really don't care what side of this conversation you're on, as long as you are respectful. You can have your opinion. Mods, an opinion is opinion, unless it's being insulting or disrespectful. We're going to leave it. Okay. Now, that is going to be, it is very weird. That's why I said, come on, Aaron, keep it cute. We love good chats. We love a good dialogue. We love a good debate over here. Okay. We love it. We are a family of wordsmiths over here, and we never come into a battle of wits unarmed. Okay. Up here. Okay. So you can say what you want to say. It's just how you say it. Maintain respect, maintain integrity. Learn to spell a little phonetically, a little differently. If you got to really get a word out that may be of what the loose French persuasion, okay? But say what you need to say. Just make sure you're being respectful when you say it. All opinions are welcome. And to be honest, I really don't care what side of the conversation you're on. Just have the conversation, okay? Hell, good morning, Twitch. Good morning, YouTube. And good morning, Facebook. Y'all don't usually get to see me like this. Now, I know y'all here, y'all's nephews have decided to wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. I will keep it cute and keep my mic on mute as much as possible. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to start with what has happened so far. Now, remember, there have been 2 days of trial, but only 1 day of testimony. Day 1 on Thursday was opening statements, which we are going to watch in their entirety so we can understand where each side is going, get the roadmap for each side. The opening statements for day 1 were all morning for about 2.5 hours or so, collectively from both sides. And then the jury was taken out to the scene of the crime so they can view that intersection, that street, Casey's grandmother's house, all of that, so they could actually view where this happened, right? Then they came back Friday morning for the first day of testimony, okay? On Friday, there was testimony, very emotionally charged testimony in regards to the family members who were inside of the home. Now, while they were able to strategically put out the timeline and give credibility, it was, let's talk about it. Okay, so most of the family testified that they heard the pops, right? Suddenly outside or near the home, depending on who was talking. They described that Casey was coming inside the house or entering the house or about to enter the house right there at the door. We know that Casey was inside the door, putting his key into the door, and the screen door was resting on his back, right? Good morning, good morning. Now, the most important thing that the family testified to is that nobody heard any warnings. Okay, no commands, no drop it, drop the pum, stop. There were no warnings, right? So no one in the family heard any warnings, and no one in the family saw any visible confrontation prior to him being popped in the back. Now, for the prosecution, this is given weight to their, this was an ambush. This was an execution. There was no threat escalating. There was no need for this, right? Now, the defense, they're trying to, with the family, trying to mitigate the family's credibility, okay? And that's because, not because that the family's saying anything that's wrong, but what the defense is saying is, you didn't see what happened before that. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So this actually gave the impact to the jury, showing exactly what Casey's normal routine was, what he was doing that day, his presence in the home, how he was, who he was, and like the picture that I have used as the YouTube defense didn't see either. Come on. But as you can see, I chose that picture for the thumbnail because that was Casey. If Casey was out on his bike, there's a selfie he took with 2 CPD officers. Only one person in this particular trial has a mugshot, and that's Meade. So they can call Casey all the things they want. They can call Casey a thug, but only one person has a mugshot. Okay. So of course we're using the family to humanize Goodson, and it reinforces what the prosecution is saying, that this was an ordinary moment with sudden unaliving force, right? Now, so with that being what happened on Friday, Casey's sister Janae, this is not just, oh, this is what happened, this is what we saw. These people are giving the moments that they saw him popped, laid out in that kitchen, transitioning. Okay. So when his sister is saying, I saw him laying there, I saw his eyes, I saw all of these things, is very emotional. When his sister Janae leaves the stand, she comes off of the stand and her mother hugs her. The defense goes slap motherfucking nuts. Mistrial, mistrial, mistrial. They want a mistrial because they feel like that, oh, you've tainted the jury because the jury saw you hug her. Okay, so it went down, arguments. If I can find just a clip of that, I will play it. But they want to, the defense claimed he couldn't get a fair trial because Miss Tamala Payne hugged her daughter Janae. Okay. So what we'll do, we already have it up here. Oh God, they must be playing Smash Brothers. Okay. So Aaron, it went the way what I saw, it was just like what, whoa, what? Okay. Love Samit, that's one of the things that has been talked about, because the other thing is I saw, and I don't mean to trigger anyone any more than this will. And trust me, the defense opening is triggering. Just putting that warning out there, okay? I've seen a take on it to say that even though this is a tragedy, the person explained that to believe that this was not justified means you believe that Jason Meade just randomly picked a person, randomly went after a person, randomly popped a person, and this person randomly just happened to have miraculously a popper on them, right? So they're saying like it doesn't sound like a great situation, but wait, you have to look at this logically. But the thing about that is to also believe that happened means that we have to believe that Jason Meade's account of everything. And we know that starts to fall apart the second he opens his mouth. Why? Remember, Jason Meade's initial account was that he was sitting at the light. He was not the first car at the light, and he was not the last car at the light, but he was sitting in the line of folks waiting to go onto that major artery or to turn onto that more busy street. And as Casey was waiting kind of in the middle of the intersection to make his left turn, so he's waiting for traffic to pass, according to Meade, Casey was pointing down the cars that were coming past him. Remember, that was Meade's account. But when we watched the surveillance and we watched that video, we saw that Casey pulled up, and the stop that my uncle likes to use, which is STOP, slightly tapple and pedal, right? He didn't come to a complete stop all the way. He barely stopped because there was nothing coming. There was one car that went past, and then he turned. At no time did he aim that car down. At no time did that person crossing him in that intersection call 911 and say somebody pointed something at me. At no time as that person in the intersection came forward and said that fool was pointing poppers at people. At no point in time did the person waiting first to cross through that intersection ever say, hey, there's a crazy person in the intersection and he's just pointing at random people as they're driving by and I'm scared. I'm first in line. Did the second person say there was a man with a popper? Did the third you see what I'm saying? And at no time did Jason Meade turn on his lights. Did he radio in? Because remember, he waits till after he pops Casey to run outside and say, oh, shoot, y'all know where I'm at. Let me turn my lights on real quick and run back. So this is going to be interesting. Let's get into the opening statement. So we know what has happened so far, which has been family testimony. We know what we have coming up. My goal with this is that we don't take our eyes off this case, regardless of what side you feel you're on or what you believe. Don't take your eyes off of this case. Franklin County, Columbus, Ohio. Born and raised there, I am encouraging you to have two conversations at one time. You can have two viral conversations at one time. And I am encouraging anybody who has a platform to encourage the conversation. Matter of fact, if you're getting a platform because of other viral issues, I think it would probably be wise if you're being blessed to be a blessing and use your platform to say, hey, there's a lot going on in the city right now. A mistake was made. We're human. I need help. In no way, shape, or form am I trying to take in while we're viral. Justice for Casey Goodson Jr. or keep your eyes on Ohio versus Meade, or there's a big trial going on. There's more going on in the city that could be more important. And I thank y'all for the time and attention you're giving me, whatever it may be. But I think that we're blessed to be a blessing. And I think that's what we should be doing. So because of that, I am actually live on Facebook today. Let's go. Opening statement.
Two, if Kate is doing anything, tell her to slow down.
You got better.
What was better yesterday? It's Goose. Sue says she has a nerve loss just in
All rise.
Yeah, let's go to the back row. Everyone get a seat. Thank you for turning off your phone. Good morning, everyone. We now have a new court reporter, Sue Coops.
Don't do statement.
She'll be handling for the remainder of the trial in this matter. What we're going to do today is we're going to have counsel for the state and counsel for the defense present oral arguments, and then we have a bus reserved at 1:30 to take you guys on a jury view, and then we'll break for the day, and then we'll begin taking testimony tomorrow morning. Again, similar time that if you can be here by 8:45. Try and start by 9, but you know, I had another hearing I had to attend to earlier today. Are there any opening statements on behalf of the state?
Sure. Thank you. Counsel, would you please support? Ladies and gentlemen, 6 shots in the back. That's what this case boils down to. 6 shots in the back. The evidence will show that on December 4th, 2020, the defendant shot Casey Goodson Jr. 6 times in the back, killing him. At the time, Casey had entered his house, was carrying a bag of Subways, and was listening to YouTube music on his AirPods. Mr. Meade shot Casey with a Daniel Defense Select Fire Rifle, semi-automatic, automatic settings on it. It was issued to him by the Franklin County Sheriff's Office as a member of the SWAT. The rifle was equipped with a laser sight. Mr. Meade stated to another officer on that day that Casey was going into the house with a gun as he was pulling up. Notably absent from that statement was any talk about Casey pointing the gun at Mr. Meade prior to him shooting. 30 days, approximately 30 days after the shooting, investigators received a written statement from Mr. Meade. In that statement, Mr. Meade said that before he shot Casey, Casey turned on the threshold of his home and leveled a gun at him. Now, the evidence is going to show that Casey did have a firearm. He had a Smith & Wesson .45 handgun that had an extended clip, meaning It's a semi-automatic handgun. It has a clip that goes into the handle of the gun, and it was an extended one, meaning that it was larger than just the handle of the gun. We also had a holster, and he also had a CCW permit, meaning that he was legally allowed to be carrying a firearm. After the shooting, the police gathered photographs, or took photographs rather, documenting things as they were after the fact. Mr. Meade did not have a body camera on him, so there is no video of the shooting.
I would like to point out, and I'm sure it's going to come out in trial, but of course we have another trial going at this time. So just real quickly, I would like to point out that Meade has had a very less than stellar, less than mediocre review in every single department that he has been in. So much so that when he was actually a corrections officer at Jackson Pike, which is the Franklin County Corrections, or the Rice Street of Columbus, Ohio, okay? When he was working there as a corrections officer, he actually got a disciplinary infraction that it was so severe that it said that he was not allowed to be around inmates. Now, how do you work at a jail and can't be around inmates? So I just would like to point out that Meade's record is public. Meade's record has been made public, and Meade does not have a even mediocre annual review unless and until he is in a department with no checks and balances and no body cam.
Among the things documented was the gun that Casey was carrying, which was on the floor underneath Casey. When Officer Meade turned him over from his stomach to his back, Casey landed face down with his hands out. The gun was underneath him, underneath his torso. Casey had been carrying a subway bag. You will see photographs of where the subway bag didn't end up underneath Casey. Ended up off to the left between the stove and the refrigerator in the Goodson, or in the Payne kitchen. The house that Casey was entering was where he lived. Lived there along with his grandmother, Sharon Payne, his uncle, Ernest Payne, his sister, Janaea, I think it's Jones now, she's now married, and a cousin. In addition, there were a number of young children that lived there as well. Ernest's daughter, I believe the cousin's daughter, Casey's little brother had been dropped off earlier that day.
Grandma's house, right?
Was in the home. One of the children, I don't recall which one, was actually sitting at the kitchen table eating a bowl of cereal when the shooting happened. That child immediately ran to her grandmother's room. And you're going to see that this is not a large house. It's a small house. The other thing that police documented were the keys to the house. They were in the door that Casey entered. still in the key latch of the door.
So subs in the left side, key in the door, but you turn to.
How do we know these things? Well, we know them from the investigation that was done. The police and later the FBI, and you'll actually have it, inspected the storm door that Casey entered through. There was a storm door and an inside door. The storm door swung right to left. The inside door swung, well, I guess right to left also, but inward. The storm door had glass in it. You'll see that the glass was all broken.
And if the doors open separate ways,
the porch and inside.
and he's going in, door on his back, sandwiches, but he
It also had
turned around.
like a screen protector that didn't cover the entire
Now
storm,
Casey, a Power Ranger.
but it was in the upper portion of the storm door. And that was a metal screen. There were 3 bullet holes in it. There was also a defect, a bullet defect in the top of the screen. You'll have that to look at yourselves because it was eventually collected by the FBI. What else is there that relates to the shooting, the shots? Well, they collected 6 casings, spent casings, out in the side yard. And this is a diagram done by somebody from the FBI. This is Casey's house. This is Estates Place. It's 3996 Estates Place. It's the location that's here in Franklin County. This Estates Place dead ends into Case Road, which runs north is up. This is south. So this is, this direction is south. Sorry. This is the west side of Casey's house. This is the south side of Casey's house, the east side of Casey's house, and the north side of Casey's house. This is Casey's car, which was parked on the wrong side of the street, which was the habit of Casey and, well, actually this is his grandmother's car that Casey drove, which was the habit of Casey and Ernest, because there's a fire plug over across the street on the other side. So they would typically, when they pulled in, they just would pull in with the left side here. So sidewalk that goes up, there's a front door that they didn't use at the time. There's a front porch to the house here. And then a walk that goes around to a fenced area. And this is the side door is right here. This is a little porch or stoop with an awning over top of it. And things that are of significance here is that the level, you step up to the porch. I think that's roughly about 10 inches from the sidewalk. And then you step into the house, and that's another 8 inches or thereabouts, but it's an older house, things have settled, and so everything's not level. I think maybe if you draw a line out, I think the measurement may be 22 inches between the level of the sidewalk and the level of the front or the kitchen floor here. This is an entryway in here. This is the inside doors that usually only swung about 90 degrees. Living room area out here. This was Sharon's bedroom, the grandmother's. This was Ernest's bedroom, and I think Janae and the cousins stayed in this room. Casey slept in the basement. He was down in the basement, one bathroom for this house, so bathroom time is probably pretty premium for them. Kitchen table here. This is the stove. This is the refrigerator, and then this is a little passway goes by the bathroom and into the hallway to the bedrooms. Casey ends up right in this area right here is where he falls. I may have a picture. I hope I'm not blocking anybody. I'm not a very good window. This is just a larger version of the house, so you can see the interior of the house here. And as I say, Casey ended up in this area right here. The subway bags end up over here. The gun ends up because they rolled Casey. He fell on his face. He was rolled to his back, and eventually CPR was started on him until the medics arrived. And the medics took over, and that's all done in this area. The gun is photographed right around in here. You'll see the photograph, and one of the interesting things to note in the photograph of Casey's gun is that the safety on the gun was engaged, meaning you couldn't pull the trigger because the safety was on. It hadn't been taken off. Now, what do we know about the shots? Well, we know there's 6 of them. They're documented by the coroner in the autopsy. They're all on the back side. One's in the buttocks. They all travel back to front. 3 of them exited Casey. Four exited Casey. 2 of them, the coroner recovered the bullet still in Casey during the autopsy. There are 3 shots in Casey's upper back. Shot number 1 is just left of the midline of his upper back, and it travels back to front and exits just left of his midline in the front. There's an exit one. Travels slightly upward and slightly right to left. The second shot is in the same area, a little more left of the midline, and travels back to front and exits again right around his left breast in that area. I believe I'm misstating that. The third shot is a bit further left on Casey's back, and again travels in the same general direction back to front and exits further left of his midline in his front.
Y'all remember this team, right? Not only for him, but remember they represented Adam Coy, who we know, actually Adam Coy unalived, former Officer Coy unalived Andre Hill, literally the day of Casey's funeral in Franklin County. Adam Coy was probably the first officer I've seen held accountable in my entire 40 years of living in Columbus, Ohio. First officer. We know that after Adam Coy was found guilty, Mr. Meade over there with that peekaboo in the top was he didn't want his trial in Franklin County anymore. He wanted to move it out. Now we know that Franklin County is more likely to have folks that look like a mixture of folks and some folks in there that look like Casey more than any other county. So they were trying to get it moved to another county. This same team represented Adam Coy as well. So we know Miss Ma'am right there in the middle loves to rage bait.
The fourth shot, again, is on his left side, and it's actually comes in at the. And by the way, Casey was much slimmer than I am. He was 23 years old at the time, and it went into his left side and actually took a fair amount of flesh. It's a very ugly wound, and it is much sharper upward than the first three shots. And so they're really, because of the nature of the wound, you really don't see an entrance and an exit wound because it took a fair amount of tissue with it.
Good morning, Layla.
The fifth shot is in his lower right back, and it has a rather dramatic upward trajectory.
He was crouched down and hiding.
The coroner recovered the bullet, or a deformed bullet, in Casey's front side. It did not exit. And certainly consistent with when the shot came in, the body being bent in some sort of position like that, as opposed to the first three shots, which it's an upward trajectory, but it's not an acute. I think that's a geometric term. I wasn't very good at geometry either. And then the fifth shot, or I'm sorry, the sixth shot was back to front. It's in the right buttocks, and it does not have that acute angle, and it travels left to right, and the bullet was recovered in Casey. So how do we know about the Subway sandwiches? Well, Casey had we have a receipt showing that Casey purchased 2 or 3 Subway subs just within 5 or 10 minutes of when the shooting occurred. The shooting occurred right around noon on December 4th. We have the bag on the floor. We also have stills from video at the Subway store that showed Casey exiting the store carrying a Subway bag, out in the parking lot heading to his car carrying a Subway bag. How do we know about the YouTube music? Well, you'll hear from Detective Howe, who's a Columbus police detective, and he's a forensics expert. And one of the things he did is he looked at Casey's phone and gathered information from Casey's phone. And he found that Casey's phone was paired with AirPods, and that he got records from Google on Casey's account that found that he had a YouTube music account. And looking at that, he was able to determine that at the time that this all occurred, YouTube music was playing on Casey's account in his phone. How do we know about the AirPods? Well, one, you'll see in the photographs, there are 2 AirPods laying on the floor where Casey had been after he was removed. And you'll have those AirPods because they weren't collected by the police, but they were eventually turned over to the police by Ernest, who, when the police were all done, Ernest came and cleaned up the house, and among other things that he documented was the Subway sandwiches, the bag of Subway sandwiches, and the AirPods. You'll also have the testimony of Sam Rippey, Officer Sam Rippey, who was an early officer to arrive at the scene after the shooting. He was from the Columbus Police. He's a uniformed officer. And upon his arrival, when he got up to the house, because he approached with caution, because there had been a shooting report, he was eventually summoned inside to assist because the individual who had been administering CPR to Casey was getting tired. It's not an easy thing to do. And so Officer Rippey took over and he saw the AirPod in his ear. And Officer Rippey had a body cam on him. So we're not going to show you the footage because it's pretty graphic and really not necessary. But we have captured stills from the footage of that period of Officer Rippey's body cam. And you can see the AirPod still, at least one AirPod still in Casey's ear.
Still in his ear.
But you'll also hear from the medic who, once they were permitted in, took over the care for Casey. And he recalls that there were AirPods. And you're actually he'll tell you that he actually removed the AirPods from Casey's ears so that as he was assessing it, because he was doing like a good medic would do, an initial assessment, and he's checking his head, and so forth. And so he removed the AirPods from Casey's ears. So that's how we know that. We also recovered a cloth holster that Casey had in his front pants that carried his Smith & Wesson. And you're going to have the ATF weapon trace to look at that'll show that this weapon was purchased by Casey lawfully. So 1 or 2 years earlier, and the officers who eventually recovered the weapon will be able to tell you that it hadn't been fired; it was fully loaded. There were no empty rounds, and Officer Rippey saw the holster. So did the medic, and I believe so did one of Mr. Meade's colleagues, Officer Ryan Rosser, who was one of the first officers on the scene. You're going to have the photographs of the keys in the door to show that they were still there. Even after Casey had been taken away, they were still there, right where Casey had used them to unlock the door. You're going to have a still shot from Officer Rippey's body cam that shows where Casey was on the floor at the time they were doing CPR, and it's inside the house by at least 2 to 3 feet, and he's lying right in this area right there. Not back here, not on the porch, but inside the house. And that's significant. And the reason that it's significant is that you're going to hear from Dr. Jeremy Bauer, who's an expert, and among the areas of his expertise is to reconstruct accident and shooting scenes. And I'm the wrong guy to try to tell you how he does it. He will explain it, but he uses scans that are taken. He uses software, and he's able to develop graphics and make determinations. And what he worked on was looking at the location of the holes in the screen that the shots passed through. And by the way, Dr. Shepler, the assistant coroner who did the autopsy, is going to tell you that the nature of the wound was such that it was clear that the bullets had passed through some intermediary source before they struck Casey, meaning, I mean, it's pretty obvious that if the hole's in the door and Casey's on the other side of it, the bullet had passed through. But the medical evidence supports that as well because of the configuration of the entry rooms that she saw.
Slowly but surely.
And so Dr. Bauer took those and looked at them, and he was able to determine that Casey's level at the time that he received the upper back shots didn't line up with any of the screenshots. When you looked at where those screenshots were and tried to position, it's almost like a trial and error trying to position the person to line them up and knowing where some of these bullets ended up. One of the bullets ended up in the soffit above the sink here. There's a soffit, and the police recovered one of the bullets that they dug out of that was stuck in the drywall. I think there was a picture there.
I can't.
Hit the picture, the frame of the picture, and demolished that and stuck in the driveway. Another, there was a microwave that was sitting over here. Another of the bullets that they recovered, they dug out of the microwave. They believed that there was a third bullet that had penetrated the soffit and was back in the open space that had all been boxed in and stuff. And you're going to see in the photographs that the police actually ripped out some of the drywall to look, but determined that they were going to have to climb up in there and so forth. And the decision was made not to look any further. There was another bullet that was found on the floor, basically beneath where Casey had been lying. Those were the three bullets that were recovered by the police. Now, back to Dr. Bauer. What Dr. Bauer determined was that the lower shots of Casey did in fact line up once you position Casey at the level of the kitchen floor. And because of the lack of damage, and this is a very narrow space, I encourage you when you go on the jury view to step up on the porch and look inside the kitchen areas to get some concept of how tight the space is here. There was no bullet damage to the interior door. There was no bullet damage to the wall right opposite. All of the damage was on in to the kitchen. So based on what Dr. Bauer is going to tell you,
Oh, man, look.
I think it's safe to conclude that Casey was inside the house when he was struck by the shots. Now, how'd this come around? Because as the judge told you, there are two charges here. There's murder and reckless homicide. And the murder charge says it's not purposely, it's not intentionally killing someone. It is that the charge is that Mr. Goodson or Mr. Meade knowingly caused serious physical harm to Casey that resulted in his death. I talked yesterday about mental knowledge. You're going to have to determine when somebody's holding a semi-automatic rifle with a laser sight that he's got fixed on it. And pulls the trigger and fires 6 shots. Is that knowingly causing serious physical harm? That's for you to determine.
Real quick, I'm going to say I like that. There's a couple of differences that I can remember from the first opening to this opening, and this might be why he's taking his time and doing it his way. Couple of things that they said in this opening that they made clear in this opening that may not have been as clear in the first time they did the opening, and that was outlining what landed beside him versus what was under him. We knew that came out in some of the testimony, but they did not sit and break it down as to how he fell, when he fell, and when he was popped. The other thing is we know we went through the whole rigmarole where everybody wanted to get up there. Every attorney got up there and laid the screen door on their back and tried to show us how it must have happened. And the defense got up there with the screen door and laid it on their back and all of that. But it is very important. We didn't hear anything about the trajectory until everybody wanted to lay the screen door on their back. I like how he's lining up right here, that the only way that lines up, the only way that makes sense is if Casey was already in the house. Remember last trial, there was a lot of back and forth as to if he was stepping inside the house, unlock the door, if the door was open and he fell in, or if he was already in. And they're saying unequivocally he was in the house when he was popped and it went through that door. Now, the other thing is out here outlining the charges. We know that they struggled real bad, had to restart like 4 times in that dang on deliberation last time. What they lost like 3 or 4 jurors during the back and forth. And right now to outline that he knowingly caused serious physical harm that caused the unaliving of Casey, and pointing out simple things which were choices that Meade made. We know they're going to point out that he didn't follow his training, that he didn't use cover, that he didn't even protect himself in trying to get to Casey, when they point out the backyard and all the places that he could have taken cover and the things that he should have done per his training. But right now, when they're saying that simple choice, whether to go semi or fully auto, that right there was a knowing choice. I think they've studied their last case.
But how did we get here? Well, you're gonna learn that on December 4th, Mr. Meade was part of a task force that was headed by the U.S. Marshals. It's called SOFAST, which stands for the Southern Ohio Fugitive Apprehension Strike Force. And that as a member of that, what SOFAST does is they look for people who have arrest warrants for them. Casey didn't have an arrest warrant for him. They weren't looking for Casey. I don't think anybody's going to suggest that they were. But they were looking for another individual that lived on Estates Place. And so the SOFAS team, along with, I think, either the Franklin County Sheriff's SWAT unit or Special Investigation Unit, I'm not sure which, were out there that day looking for this individual. And they made contact with that individual's mother. He was not around. They searched the house, and they were leaving for the day. They were satisfied that he wasn't there, and so they were chalking up that, okay, this is one we'll look for on another day. So they were leaving that day, and getting ready to head back to home or the office or whatever. And the route that they took to leave, and Mr. Meade was one of the last to leave, along with Officer Rosser, who's a Columbus police officer, but was also part of that task force, and a fellow by the name of Joseph Yorkowitz, who is at the time was a state adult parole officer who was working with them that particular day. We're leaving. Mr. Meade was driving a Marshall issued pickup truck, had no markings on it, but it was equipped with a light package that they could turn on so that to identify it as a police vehicle, the blue and red lights and flashing. It had a siren. It had a speaker. And he was riding by himself, and Officer Rosser and Officer Yorkowitz were riding together, and they also had a Marshall equipped vehicle similar to what Mr. Meade had. When these guys are operating as so fast and trying to execute a warrant, they suit up in body armor. Mr. Meade's had a placard on it that said U.S. Marshal. I think maybe on the back it said U.S. Marshal Strike Force or Task Force. Don't recall off the top of my head, but you'll have photographs to see. Because they were done for the day, they'd taken off their equipment and geared down. So they get in their trucks, and Mr. Meade was first, and he exited Estates Place onto Ferris Road, which Ferris Road is one street east of Carl Road. It runs parallel. And he travels up to the traffic light at Carl and Ferris. He arrives at the stop bar just about the same time as Casey is coming from the subway shop and heading home in his vehicle. And in his written statement, Mr. Meade said, before confronting the suspect, I observed him pumping his gun in the air at the intersection of Carl and Ferris Road. He appeared agitated and looked as though he was yelling as he pumped his gun. I could see the suspect clearly since his vehicle was only about 10 feet from my truck. And I was sitting in an elevated position relative to his car. I could also see that the suspect's gun had an extended magazine. Not only was the suspect pumping the gun in the air, but he also pointed the gun at a driver of a passing vehicle, tracking the vehicle as it passed northbound before turning onto Ferris Road and pointing the gun directly at me as he drove. So that's the encounter initially. Now, what Mr. Meade didn't know when he wrote that statement 30 days after the shooting is that St. Matthias School, which sits at the corner of Ferris and Carl.
30 days later, after you already knew the whole scene, everything that had happened, you could sit back and think about it, and you knew for a fact there was an extended magazine on it.
And this parking lot is right off of Ferris. Had cameras that covered, security cameras that covered their parking lot. And those security cameras actually show the intersection where this supposed event occurred. And the police retrieved those videos. And what the video showed Mr. Meade pulling up to the stop bar. It showed that as he pulls up to the stop bar, and there are two lanes there. There's a left turn lane and a lane that either goes straight and right or right turn. As he's pulling up, there's a car in the right-hand lane that turns right onto Carl Road because the northbound traffic, he's able to do that. And right after he turns right, there's a northbound car that comes completely through the lane and is following him. All of that happened before Casey's car arrived. And Casey's car is traveling southbound on Carl. So that unlike what Mr. Meade said, Casey's car does not stop. Casey pulls up and the traffic is clear and he makes a continual left turn. He does drive by Mr. Meade, who's first in line, and the line is still forming. He drives by a heating and cooling van that we now know was driven by a fellow by the name of Chris Korn. And he drives by Officer Rosser, who is the third vehicle in line, who is coming up behind. You'll hear from Chris Korn. He recalls this. He didn't see him coming. I think his description was that saw Casey with his hands on the wheel, and I think he characterized it as it was like he was dancing in his seat. Dancing in his seat. Like maybe listening to this. He passed Officer Ross. You'll hear from Officer Ross. He didn't see him. Only Mr. Meade saw it. Only Mr. Meade. Mr. Meade says that he got on his radio and broadcast that. Notably, he didn't broadcast, hey, this guy just pointed a gun at me. Broadcast, there's a guy out here with a gun. And Mr. Meade does immediately make a U-turn right there at the intersection and head back and rolls by Officer Rosser. Doesn't actually stop, but they're very slow, and it looks like there's an exchange there. You'll hear from Officer Rosser. He's puzzled. He doesn't have his radio on, so he doesn't hear any broadcast on the radio. But he doesn't know what's going on. You know, his initial thought is, oh, I must have left something behind. He's going back again. But he then backs up and turns and follows Mr. Meade back to Estates. Meanwhile, there's also a camera that captures the intersection of Estates and Ferris Road. And you're going to see that Casey actually puts his turn signal on before he turns down Estates. Now, Mr. Meade turns around, and Mr. Meade isn't in a uniform. He's not a uniformed officer. But he's got police lights, but he doesn't turn them on. He's got a siren, but he doesn't use the siren. Mr. Meade then eventually turns on to Estates Place, and according to Mr. Meade and according to Officer Ross, they stop at around Sales Road, which is here's a map of the area. Might help a little bit visualize this. This is the Ferris Road intersection. This is where the first encounter actually happens. This is the parking lot for St. Matthias, States Road right down there. This is Sales Road. This is Casey's home down here. This distance is roughly 100 yards, about a football field. So, according to Mr. Meade in his written statement, and according to Officer Rosser, Mr. Meade stops right around here, and Officer Rosser does as well. Mr. Meade says he can see Casey's car down at his house, and he sees Casey out of his car. Mr. Meade then jumps out and starts putting his body armor. In his written statement, he said, I was not wearing my tactical vest, so I pulled into the western side of the road, that would be Estates, near the intersection of Estates and Sales Road, several houses north of the suspect's car. I quickly got out and went to the bed of my truck. About that time, Officer Rosser and Yorkowitz pulled beside me and asked, what's going on? I started putting on my tactical vest and yelled, he's right there in the car at the end of the street, or something to that effect. Rosser asked who I was talking about, and I yelled, the guy with a gun. Just then I put on my vest. The suspect got out of his car, still holding the black pistol in his right hand. I yelled, That's him right there. He's still got the gun in his hand. In response, the suspect looked directly at me, then turned away and started quickly moving toward the house located at 3996 Estates Place. He also appeared to have a plastic bag in his left hand. Now, remember, this is back during COVID. Casey also had a mask on, like people were wearing back then. He was wearing a hoodie. You'll hear from Officer Rosser, and Officer Rosser is going to say, all I could tell was that there was the person was male, and I just knew that from stature. I couldn't tell anything more. Didn't see a gun. Couldn't tell. But according to Officer Rosser, Mr. Meade, now body armored up with his rifle, not his handgun, but his rifle, jumps back into his truck and heads down the road. Rosser's trying to put his body armor on and says, "Oh, I'm not ready yet." So he gonna follow his colleague. You know, he wants to be back up here, even though he doesn't know what's going on yet. Nobody's telling him. Nobody's stopping long enough to say, "Here's what I saw. This is what the situation is." He doesn't know. So he gets back into the truck, and he and Yorkowitz follow down. He doesn't even have his vest attached. He doesn't have his holster on. And he will tell you that he pulls up behind Officer Meade's truck, which Officer Meade's truck ends up right about here. There's the side door. This is a fenced-in area. And Rosser pulls up right behind it here. The reason that's not in the diagram there is that at one point they were trying to get the squad out. It's a tight street, and somebody moved Officer Rosser's truck. They started to move Mr. Meade's truck, and someone said, "Whoa, wait a minute. This crime scene may better leave that there." So they left it there. But Officer Rosser pulls up. There's these are rather large trees. He can't see anything as he pulls up. He saw the individual, and I think he will say to you that the individual started at a walk, but then his pace quickened, or his last step that he saw before he disappeared behind the tree or the side of the house seemed quick. To his perception as a police officer, he said, it's one of these things we as police see is somebody wanting to avoid us. But as he pulls up and he's opening his door, he hears gunshots. And then he hears, "Show me your hands." Well, he hears gunshots. All of a sudden, this has moved to a whole different level. So he's out of his truck as fast as he can. He doesn't worry about buckling his vest or buckling his gun belt, because he's got to put the vest on first and then the gun belt. And he actually drops his gun belt on the sidewalk right around in here.
Then show me your hands from an officer.
As he comes up, and when he comes up, Meade is inside of this gate with his rifle, and he can't see anything. you know. And so at that point, he follows me into the house, or may have even led the way into the house. It's not totally clear. And they find Casey on the floor. Officer Rosser, when he enters the house, this door is like this. He kicks that door all open, and you're going to see it's in that position in the police photographs. And there he sees Ernest, who is in the living room area with his daughter, who had a wart or something on her arm, bleeding, and he'd been trying to attend to it. And Officer Rosser, probably in not the nicest way, said, "Get on your knees, don't move, or I'll shoot you." Wants to take control of the area. Officer Yorkowitz quickly is behind him and replaces him at the door there. Officer Rosser says that Mr. Meade turned Casey over from his front, lying face down, to his back. He rolls him, apparently grabbing his feet. And Officer Rosser then, I think, really kind of loses track of Mr. Meade at that point. Because his concern is, what else is in this house? You know, we want to make things safe. So he proceeds up into this area of the kitchen, and there are some, I believe, a Rottweiler and a pit bull that were family pets that are in that vicinity, and Officer Rosser is kind of holding them at bay. Meanwhile, Casey's cousin, I think, was in the bathroom and comes out and is ordered away, and Janaea comes out looking and is ordered away. As I said, there was a small child having cereal at the table when the shooting occurred. She ran to her grandmother. Obvious place to go. And so Sharon Payne is initially dealing, because she'll tell you she heard shots. Ernest will tell you he heard shots. Ernest actually said, I think there were about 5 or 6. Sharon doesn't know how many shots. She said it was like a chandelier crashing, you know. But before she can, and she's in her bedroom at the time, before she can exit her bedroom, she attends to her grandchild, you know, trying to calm her, gets her to sit down. And then Sharon, as she comes out, she comes into the living room area, and Ernest at this point is on his knees holding his daughter. Yorkowitz is over here. Ernest is saying, Mom, get down, they'll shoot you. Mom, get down.
Sue, how are you doing? You need a break or? Okay. Discuss one approach real quick.
Yeah.
I think you end up taking a break. Obviously, juror number 2 was listening.
I need to read this. I always forget to read it to the jurors, so my staff made it and puts it right on my desk. Do not discuss this case among yourselves. Do not permit anyone to discuss it with you or in your presence. It is your duty not to form or express an opinion on the case until it is finally submitted to you. Do about a 15-minute break.
All rise.
If you ever need a break, just let me know.
All right, guys, I'm gonna skip through the break here.
All rise.
Everyone can have a seat. May continue. Thank you.
James, I moved this over because I was told I was blocking, as I say, I'm not a very good window. I want to go back to the intersection. I read to you a portion of Mr. Meade's statement about what he said happened here at the intersection of Carl and Ferris. And in another portion of his written statement, I think he may have actually said it even more clearly or more detailed. He said, I looked right, north, to ensure that the road was clear and saw a dark colored hatchback driving southbound on Carl Road. That vehicle approached the intersection in the left-hand lane, signaling that he was turning left, east onto Ferris Road. The vehicle stopped to wait for northbound traffic to clear. And as it did so, I saw the driver had a black handgun with an extended magazine in his right hand. He had the gun raised above the steering wheel, held sideways, palm down, aimed towards the windshield. He was repeatedly straightening his arm forward such that he was pumping the gun towards the windshield, then pulling it back. He also appeared to be yelling as he pumped the gun, but I could not see what, if any, he was saying. A car traveling northbound on Carl Road approached the intersection, and the individual aimed the gun at the driver of the car. The individual tracked the driver with his gun as the car traveled north, but I did not see whether the driver reacted to the gun. And as I told you, there's a video from St. Matthias from the parking lot here. It shows all this, and it just didn't happen. The car, Casey's car, never stopped. It came to the intersection and turned left in front of Mr. Meade without stopping, without a pause. Just a slowing to make a left-hand turn. We've all made them that way. But in his statement, he's saying he stopped there and actually tracked a car that came through the intersection. It just didn't happen, ladies and gentlemen. That's what we know. Mr. Meade also talked about In his written statement, I'm just changing things here. He talked about in his written statement, and talked about the fence area here and the confrontation at the doorway. And this is what he said in his written statement. He's already described how he has exited his vehicle
Oh my goodness.
down here. And he has come up to roughly this location here, inside of that gate, which doesn't swing freely. It's at the time it was not in the greatest of shape, and it dragged on the sidewalk. But he's inside of that gate, and he says, and he's described how he has his gun pointed at him. He's at a high ready position. And he says, but the moment after his shoulders drooped, that being Casey, he quickly turned his head and torso right in my direction to confirm my location. Apparently, Mr. Meade finds. While he suddenly and unexpectedly started to raise his right arm back. As he did so, I saw he was still holding the gun, raising the barrel upwards in my direction. I believed he intended to shoot me and that I would be killed, especially because I had no cover or concealment, and I was only a short distance away. No cover, no concealment. There's cover and concealment out there. He just chose not to use it. I screamed, dropped the gun, and moved left, north, as fast as I could in an attempt to escape the path of the barrel of the gun. He refused to drop the gun, however, and after taking a step left, I fired at the suspect. Again, you're going to hear from Dr. Bauer. And you'll see this, and you'll see it in the photographs. There is not a lot of space here, and this description that he gives of this at the doorway, that's not where Casey ended up, and that's not where Casey was when he was shot. He's further into the kitchen. So how does that happen? How does it happen? You'll have to decide. We also have another statement from Mr. Meade. You're going to hear it. And that was a statement that was made on December 4th, 2020. Many of the officers who responded to this shooting did have body cams. I've already talked about Sam Rippey's body cam. Sam Rippey's body cam also reveals something of interest. Remember, I told you Mr. Meade didn't put his lights on. We see that on the St. Matthias video, that the lights aren't on. But the reason we know the lights aren't on the States is because Sam Rippey's video, as he's approaching the house, you can can see Mr. Meade's truck and the taillights, and we can see that the lights are not activated. Now, this is after the shooting, when other Marshall task force officers have arrived and they're trying to clear the house of the occupants. The first person to be removed from the house was Ernest Payne. Makes sense because he was right there in the living room. They made them go out the front door, which was a difficult door to get through, but they were able to force the inside door open. And actually, as Officer Rippey is approaching the house, we see Ernest coming out holding his daughter from the front of the house. So we know it's after the shooting. We know there are officers all over the place. Nobody knows what's going on. They're trying to figure things out. And we can see Mr. Meade's truck parked approximately where it shows in the diagram. And the lights aren't on. And then something odd happens. As Officer Rippey is approaching, and the medics are on the scene, but they aren't in the house yet because the protocol is they've got to clear the house before they allow the medics into the house. And as Officer Rippey approaches, we see Mr. Meade coming out from this area. He appears from this side of the house, and he's heading across the yard, and he says, "Hold the medics." And you know, he seems to be heading. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm upside down here. He comes around here. Officer Rippey is up in this area, and he comes out and he says, "Hold the medics." His truck is there. We see the lights aren't on. Officer Rippey turns, and as he turns, the camera turns, and he says, "Hold the medics." We hear him yell, "Hold the medics." And then he turns back, and Mr. Meade is at the door of his truck. And guess what? His lights are on. So here in the middle of this chaos, after this shooting, after he's shot this guy 6 times, after they're trying to clear the house to get medical attention to him, what's he doing? He's out flipping on his police lights. Ask yourself why. What's going on? Why would he need his police lights then? He doesn't need them. Police lights are there to show that he's a police officer. They're to alert somebody that you're following that, hey, you're dealing with a police officer. The person he's following is lying on the floor with 6 gunshot wounds in his back. You'll also see a body video from a Minerva Township police officer, Seth Pennant. And he wasn't part of any conversation, but as he is walking by the front porch, he hears, or his body cam picks up Officer Meade speaking to another officer on the porch, The officer says, what happened? Reed first gets interrupted and the family has now been removed from the house, and he goes down the sidewalk and says, folks, you gotta stay back, you gotta stay back. Then he comes back up on the porch and he says, he was going to the house with a gun. As I pulled up, he was going in the house with a gun. And the other officer said, really? No, doesn't say, as he said 30 days later.
That it was pointed at him or anybody else.
He turned
Anybody who
the
owns
barrel.
a popper and has
Pointed
it
at
on them is going to go in
Doesn't say, I was in
Yeah.
fear for my life. Said, he's going in the house with a gun. That's what the evidence is going to show, ladies and gentlemen. You will have to decide whether this is knowingly causing serious physical harm to another that resulted in their death, or a justified shooting. You'll have to determine that based on the evidence that is presented here in this court. Look at all the evidence carefully. Listen to the testimony. Consider the testimony. Consider the credibility of that. Consider the physical evidence, which I submit to you is overwhelming in this case. Physical evidence, and I'll remind you, no one saw a gun until Casey was lying on the floor having been shot, other than Mr. Meade. No one. And remember what Mr. Meade said that day. He's going to the house with a gun. That is not an imminent threat. That is not an immediate threat. That is not a threat of death. Ladies and gentlemen, we accept our burden. We welcome it. And I submit to you that when you have considered all the evidence in this case, you will determine the state met its burden. And that this was exactly what we have charged: murder and reckless homicide. Thank you.
And the opening statement on behalf of the defense.
May I have a moment to settle down?
May.
Thank you very much.
Sorry. But this was that.
House with a gun. Has anybody who lives in a house and gone to
May I have the screen
And then you turn it on ours. Oh, do we have to? Thank you.
May I proceed?
May?
May it please the court. The death of Mr. Goodson is tragic. Everyone here agrees. It's tragic. Everyone also agrees that on December 4th, 2020, Mr. Goodson was armed with a loaded semi-automatic handgun with an extended magazine. Throughout this case, you're going to hear evidence. You're going to see pictures, diagrams. You'll hear witness after witness after witness take the stand. And I want you to keep coming back to one piece of evidence. One question I want you to continue to ask yourself time and time and time again. After you've listened to 3 weeks of witness testimony, after you've seen photograph after photograph after photograph, after you've looked at the diagrams, ask yourself one question. Why did Jason do a U-turn in the middle of an intersection? And when you go to answer that question, when you link up that question with the evidence that you'll see, with the photographs, with the diagrams, with the witness testimony, the answer to that question will be the only answer that logic dictates. Because he saw Mr. Goodson point a gun. That's why Jason did the U-turn in the middle of the intersection.
Girl,
Now, Jason told investigators in
looking
his
at that
statement
part.
that he saw that semi-automatic handgun with an extended magazine 4 separate times on December 4th, 2020. And before I get to walking you through those 4 separate times that he saw the gun on December 4th, 2020, I want to talk to you about what an extended magazine means. Because to a trained eye, to a law enforcement officer, an extended magazine is important and it's distinct for 2 reasons. Number 1, the person who has that extended magazine has made a deadly weapon deadlier because it has the capacity to hold more bullets and fire more rounds. That may not mean anything to me or you, but to a trained law enforcement officer, it means something.
So if that's the case, if there's no extended magazine allowed for anything, because all it does is make a deadly weapon deadlier, and if you own one, every single time you own one, a cop has a reason to get scared and pop you, then why are they available legally? Why is that a legal modification to your popper? But at the end of the day, no matter how many bullets he had, his gun was still semi-auto, so he would have had to squeeze every single one of them. Your client squeezed and held until 6 came out. 1 squeeze. So whose weapon was deadlier? Oh, raccoon-eyed mother.
The second reason it's distinct, as Mr. Merkel demonstrated to you, because that extended magazine sticks out further than what a normal handgun would look like if you were holding it and pointing it at somebody. That extended magazine sticks out further, and law enforcement know that. Jason tells investigators that he saw that extended magazine in his written statement. He saw that extended magazine 4 separate times, and he's able to identify it because Mr. Goodson pointed it at him 2 out of those 4 times. So let's walk you through generally the 4 times where Mr. Goodson had a gun. This is the intersection of Carl and Ferris. It's just an overview of Google image map, certainly not from December 4th of 2020. But to give you an idea of where we're at in the city, there's an intersection, Carl and Ferris. Now, none of these cars are the same colors, but I made them brighter so that you guys can easily identify them. The blue represents Jason Meade, and the orange represents the Nissan Versa that was driven by Mr. Goodson. Mr. Meade is stopped at that intersection as he sees Mr. Goodson approaching that intersection. What do we do when we're stopped at an intersection? We observe, we look around. Jason has a clear view of oncoming traffic to his right and oncoming traffic to his left. He's seated in a Ford F-150 that's got a higher vantage point so he can see into the cars as they are coming and as they are going.
Stephen, you may want to take that thing down so the jurors can see
I
on the easel.
Oh,
No, she's not ready to show that.
he said take it down.
So the jurors
I
can see.
apologize. Thank you so much, Judge. Can you folks see that okay? Thank you. Parked behind Jason at the intersection is a witness, Chris Korn, who Mr. Merkel told you you'll hear from. And I'll show you the video. Pay attention to that video as Mr. Korn pulls up to that intersection because he really doesn't stop. And Mr. Korn will tell you that it's possible that Jason saw something he didn't see. Jason's got a clear view of that intersection at Carl and Ferris Road. Behind Chris Korn is in fact Officer Rosser. Officer Rosser was a teammate of Jason's and had just finished the warrant work with Jason on that day. So as Jason is at the front of the intersection observing what is going on, he sees something to the right that catches his eye. He sees the driver of this Nissan Versa making erratic movements with his hand. He sees this driver point and pump this semi-automatic handgun with an extended magazine at other motorists on the road. Jason's looking around. He sees another car drive past Mr. Goodson coming from the left. He sees this car drive past Mr. Goodson.
So you're going to sit here and stick with this after they done told you period point blank that that's not what's on. Like, you've seen the video. That did not happen.
And sees the driver, Mr. Goodson, who we all now know to be Mr. Goodson. He sees the driver pointing and tracking this firearm as at this driver of this pink vehicle. It wasn't a pink vehicle on that day, but for our purposes today, it's that pink vehicle. Jason sees that. The driver drives right by Mr. Goodson, who again points his gun. Jason is observing all of this. What does he do when he's observing all of this? He radios to his team. Now, Mr. Merkel didn't read for you what it was that Jason Meade told investigators that he said on the radio that day. But what he said was, hey guys, if you're still here, we got a guy waving a gun here at the intersection of Carl Road. That's what he's trained to do. Radio in a crime as it's being committed. That's what Jason tells investigators that he radioed on December 4th, 2020. Then Jason says, at that time, the individual turned left onto Ferris, and as he did, he pointed the gun directly at me. So there the individual is turning left onto Ferris. Again, pulls right by Jason. Jason, again, is seated higher, can look down into this car. He sees the gun point at him. He immediately ducks and gets out of the line of fire. Then he recalls.
again, none of this is on the surveillance.
Airing, and this is again in his statement that he told to investigators. I recalled airing
30 days later.
Pointing a gun at everyone out here. He's coming at you now, Ryan. Now, Mr. Merkel in his opening statement made it a big deal that Ryan Rosser didn't know what was going on. And Mr. Merkel wants to impute that fault onto Jason, who radioed to his team everything that was occurring. What you didn't hear Mr. Merkel tell you was that Jason's team lead radioed back, Dave Youngless, and you'll hear from Dave Youngless. He radios back and tells the entire So Fast team who was out on that operation that day to go back to Jason's location, to back Jason up. The car proceeds after the gun being pointed at Jason, proceeds down Ferris and turns onto Estates Place. Why did Jason make the U-turn immediately? Because he saw a gun. So Jason turns and makes that U-turn. He then stops at Ryan Rosser's car to tell Rosser and reiterate what he says on the radio. It's just a brief pause, but he nevertheless pauses and tells him, "There's the guy with the gun. Let's go."
Did he stop or did he pause?
Then Ryan proceeds to do
Serious.
the same U-turn. And they both follow Mr. Goodson. Now, fortunately, this was captured by a school, St. Matthias. There's 2 cameras at the school capturing different angles. Here's a picture of one, and I'll zoom in for you. There's where one of the cameras are, and you'll get to go see where those cameras are. When we take our jury view, pay attention to where those cameras are. Pay attention to what the intersection looks like. Look around the intersection. Observe what is going on there. And there's this second camera that captures a different angle on Estates Place. Now, I'm about to play the video for you of what took place at Carl and Barris Road. Here's the position of camera 1. You'll see Jason's truck approaching the intersection. You'll see Mr. Korn's van approaching the intersection. And you'll see Ryan Rosser's truck approaching the intersection. You see Mr. Goodson make a U-turn, and Jason immediately makes that U-turn. Why would Jason make a U-turn if he did not see a gun? Ryan Rosser then makes that same U-turn. Now, this is a zoomed in portion of that same video I told you, or I just showed you. There's Jason's truck approaching the intersection.
Yes, she is.
There's cars going by Jason. He stopped at that intersection. He sees Casey.
Come on.
Mr. Korn, pay attention. Doesn't stop, still not stopped. Jason immediately makes that U-turn. Why would he make a U-turn if he did not see a gun?
And why didn't nobody else see one?
You'll see Mr. Rosser make that same kind of U-turn.
Why didn't nobody else see one?
He has to back up.
Why is Chris Korn able to determine that the boy was just enjoying
But
it?
nevertheless, he goes in the same direction. Now here's the position of camera 2. It will show Mr. Goodson coming onto the screen and turning right down Estates Place. This is all happening quickly. You'll see 15 seconds goes by when Jason's truck comes on the screen, and Rosser is 15 seconds behind him.
Where's the car that went
So
through
we
the
just went
intersection
through
that he was pointing at?
the first 2 times that Jason saw the semi-automatic handgun with an extended magazine. The third time, Jason is searching for the man with the gun. He loses sight of him. He knows this is dangerous. He then sees sight of him on Estates Place, the street that he had just left on. The car is parked illegally facing oncoming traffic. Jason knows that's dangerous. So he sees that car parked and he realizes, oh my God, this guy's got a gun. I don't have my vest on. I don't have anything to protect myself. I know this person has a gun and I need protection. So he stops at the intersection of Sale and Estates, puts his ear on. His ear is easily identifiable as United States Marshals, grabs his service rifle. As he's doing that, Ryan Rosser pulls up. As Ryan Rosser is pulling up, along with Joseph Yorkowitz in the same vehicle, he sees the driver get out of the car, bag in his left hand, semi-automatic handgun with an extended magazine in his right. Now, in hindsight, 2020, we find out that Mr. Goodson is right-handed. How would Jason know that he was right-handed if he did not see that gun in his right hand? As that is occurring, Ryan Rosser is pulling up.
You could also
Jason tells him, there's the guy with the gun. There he is.
30
The
days.
guy with the gun looks at Jason and takes off running toward a house. He ducks behind the house and goes around this corner, ducks into the fence. Jason hops in his truck, goes down Estates Place, gets out of his truck, is identifying himself as a United States Marshal,
When?
telling lawful commands to drop the weapon.
Nobody
The
heard it.
fourth time Jason sees that semi-automatic handgun with an extended magazine is when Mr. Goodson, for whatever.
Now, are we forgetting that in the last trial, is she forgetting that her client previously testified that he did not identify himself, but he knows that Casey knew that he was the police because his vest from 100 or 200 yards away says U.S. Marshals, and the fact that he picked up speed, according to him, when he was walking, but that went from running to picking up speed to a brisk walk. I hope they pull his testimony up from the last trial and slap her in the face with it. I hope it hit her as hard as some concealer need to hit under them eyes. I'm trying with her. I'm really trying, but that Adam Coy trial and just no, like yeah.
For reason, makes a slight turn and points the gun at Jason.
And how the keys
Jason
in the
is
door.
equipped with his service rifle.
If he right-handed and the sandwich
He sees the deadly threat,
put the keys in with the left hand,
and he
that's quite a
responds
feat.
to the deadly threat with deadly force, as he was trained to do. He fired, pulled the trigger one time. One time did Jason pull the trigger on December 4th of 2020. Those are the 4 times that Jason saw the gun. Now, the facts are simple, and so is our defense. Our defense will require you to answer 2 questions. Question 1, did Jason believe he was about to be shot when he saw Mr. Goodson point the gun at him? And question 2, was Jason's decision to use deadly force reasonable through the eyes of a reasonable police officer standing in Jason's shoes without 20/20 hindsight? And I give you those 2 questions because that's what the law requires. That's what we must prove by a feather more than 50%. We must prove to you, more likely than not, that Jason believed he was about to be shot when he saw the gun be pointed at him. And 2, that his decision to respond to a deadly threat with deadly force was reasonable, based on the perspective of a reasonable police officer, not with 20/20 hindsight. And so I tell you those two questions because that is what the law requires. But don't take it from me, take it from Judge Young, who will tell you that that's what the law requires. That the perspective here is that of a reasonable police officer on the scene. And it's important for you to know that because the instructions that the judge is going to give you will not tell you to look at Mr. Goodson's perspective. They will not tell you to think about, why would Mr. Goodson point a gun? The law that the judge is going to give you tells you not to look at Casey Goodson's perspective, but rather the perspective of a reasonable police officer standing in Jason Meade's shoes on December 4th, 2020, experiencing what he experienced. So let me walk you through what Jason Meade experienced on December 4th, 2020. Before I do that, the government wants to make this case about AirPods and a CCW permit. And I must caution you, because those AirPods and that CCW permit are from the perspective of Mr. Goodson. What didn't Mr. Merkel tell you about those AirPods? That they are not noise cancellation. That Mr. Goodson had his hood up, skull cap on. What didn't Mr. Merkel tell you about those AirPods? That Jason Meade did not see them. He was completely devoid of what it was that Mr. Meade saw. More importantly, what he didn't see. And what the law requires is the perspective of a reasonable police officer in Jason Meade's shoes. It's illegal to drive with AirPods in your ear. Now the CCW permit that they want to make this case about, again, I must caution you. Again, because that's from the perspective of Mr. Goodson. There is no reasonable police officer who will take the stand and testify that the behavior that was observed by Mr. Meade on that day is consistent with CCW training. There is no officer who will take the stand and tell you that that's what a CCW permit class teaches and trains you on. There is no officer, and officers know what a CCW permit training class looks like. There is no officer who will tell you that it's okay for a CCW permit holder to be dangerous in a car with a gun. There is no officer who will tell you that it is legal for a CCW permit holder to point a gun at people in a roadway.
And none of that is on tape. Maggie, really?
A photo of Mr. Goodson in a car. You can see the headrest pointing a gun while he's in the driver's side seat.
Bitch.
I'm not saying that was from December 4th of 2020.
Yes, what you're trying
But
to
what we
imply,
are
they saw
saying
on December 4th,
is that
2020.
this behavior that Jason Meade saw, the same behavior that Jason Meade saw on December 4th of 2020 is not the behavior of a lawful CCW permit holder. And neither is this. And neither was the time
And where's
that
the one
Mr.
him riding the
Goodson
bike
put his
with
finger
Columbus
on the trigger and fired his weapon in his grandmother's house after he obtained his CCW permit. They didn't tell you that. Sure, he was allowed to carry a concealed weapon on December 4th, 2020. But that CCW permit does not give you the ability to point it at people on the road. Now taking you back to December 4th, 2020, in Jason Meade's shoes. You were on a task force with the United States Marshals. Your assignment, so fast. A dangerous task force that is tasked
That task force
with
don't have shit to do with
apprehending
Casey.
dangerous fugitives, people who are good at hiding from justice. So you hunt, you search for those people. Your warrant work is done for the day, and it's time for lunch. So you get in your truck, and you pull off of Estates Place, and you're stopped at the light of Carl and Ferris. You're stopped in the front of the light, so again, like we talked about, you can see oncoming traffic from both sides. Seating a Ford F-150, so you're higher than everybody else on the road. You are a trained eye, observing everything around you. Something catches your attention to the right. See a Nissan Versa. The driver has a handgun that he's pumping and pointing at different people on the road. You see a car approach that Nissan Versa, and you see the driver of that Nissan Versa
It did.
point the gun at that driver. That driver continues to make that left turn. He pauses for a second to let oncoming traffic clear, but he continues to make that left turn. He's turning while he's pointing a gun, and then he points the gun at you. You duck to get out of the way, and immediately get on the radio to radio to your team what it is that you are seeing. Hey, I got a guy out here with a gun on Carl and Ferris. He's pointing the gun at everyone. You are a police officer. You have just seen multiple crimes be committed. You have a duty to investigate. You're like, what is going on here? This is dangerous. You know guns are a problem in the city of Columbus.
Yeah,
You
well,
know
he has
drive-by
one.
shootings are a problem in the city of Columbus in the year 2020. You know that an extended magazine makes an already deadly weapon even more deadly. You tell your teammates. The team lead, Dave Youngless, gets on the radio, tells the other teammates to back you up. You're not going to make up something. You're not going to lie to your teammates. You know how dangerous that can be if you lie to your teammates, you make something up to your teammates who are then going to approach a man with a weapon. You give them your location, you know your team is en route. You know your backup is coming. So you do a U-turn in the middle of an intersection. Why do you do a U-turn in the middle of an intersection unless you saw a gun? There's a school and a church around. You're in a residential neighborhood. You lose sight of him. This is becoming more dangerous. You see your teammate Ryan Rosser and you pause at his truck to reiterate what you had just told Ryan on the radio. There's the guy with the gun, let's go. Ryan Rosser makes that same U-turn. You see the driver all the way down at the end of the street on Estates Place. He's parked illegally, facing oncoming traffic. You know, again, this is dangerous. You don't know whose house he's parked in front of. You see him parked on the opposite side of the road. And while you don't know whose house he's parked in front of, you do know one thing for certain. And that one thing for certain is that that man has in his possession a semi-automatic handgun with an extended magazine. You know that, but you realize you don't have any of your own protection as you approach. So you stop at the intersection of Sale and Estates. You put your vest on. Your vest that is clearly identifiable as United States.
Oh, now
Marshals.
it's clearly
You
identifiable.
grab your service rifle that the division issued you. You have to protect yourself. As that is occurring, Ryan Rosser and Joseph Yorkowitz are pulling up. You're telling them, hey, there, he's down there, he's down there. The driver of the Nissan Versa gets out of the car. You tell investigators he had a plastic bag in his left hand. In his right hand, he saw the semi-automatic handgun with an extended magazine.
Or he saw
That
where
driver looks at
his
you
holster was when he
and
turned
takes
around.
off running
30
toward
days
that
later.
house.
I don't believe nothing you
You
say.
tell Ryan, there's the guy with the gun, let's go. You hop in your truck, you fly down the street, this is emergent. You think something is about to happen.
Changing
You
everything
see
is
the
over.
driver of that car, who's now out of the car, running and ducking into a fence. He's trying to get into a house. You approach the house and say, drop the weapon, United States Marshals. You give him several commands. Right after you give him those commands, instead of dropping the weapon, Mr. Goodson, for whatever reason, we will never know, turns and points the gun at you. You fire your service rifle one time, one trigger pull, as you are trained to do, as you are trained to respond to a deadly threat. You defend yourself. You have the right to protect yourself. At that moment, when the gun is pointed at you, you have to protect yourself. Now, this is all happening very quickly.
I hope and pray
Jason
y'all
does
lose
an
this one
immediate
like y'all
U-turn.
lost
Why?
that employee and no officer
he saw the
ever hires you again.
15 seconds after, he's following Mr. Goodson. 15 seconds after that, Ryan Rosser is following Mr. Goodson.
This is
And
ridiculous.
It's all over.
And why are they allowing her to do this?
It took me longer to tell you what happened than it did in real time. Think about that as you're deliberating. Now, how are we going to be able to prove
How did he get the keys in the door?
that Jason was in fact justified in using deadly force? As the judge will tell you, deadly force may be used if the officer reasonably believes that such force is necessary to defend himself from the imminent threat of death or serious physical harm. Again, we have to prove that to you a feather more than 50%. So how are we going to prove that Jason believed he was about to be shot when he saw Mr. Goodson point the gun at him? Well, Jason wrote a statement to investigators. You're going to hear
30
it all.
days, man, if you
That statement from the investigator says, I thought I was going to be shot.
bet it
And
do.
he pointed the gun at me. I was in fear for my life.
I bet you were 30 days later.
Everyone
What a
agrees
good damn story with
that
hindsight.
when a gun is pointed at you, you're afraid. Everyone agrees that a gun is a deadly threat. But how are you going to be able to judge whether Jason's actions were in fact reasonable in the eyes of a reasonable police officer standing in Jason's shoes? Every police officer who takes this stand is going to tell you how they are trained to deal with deadly threats. Again, there is no doubt that a gun is deadly. That when they see a gun pointed at them, the law permits them to defend themselves. They do not have to wait to be shot at in order to protect themselves. And that makes sense because neither do you or I. And I'm not a police officer who puts my life on the line every single day.
Never saw any of it.
You just heard the government belabor 6 shots in the back. I think Mr. Merkel was kind enough to number those shots for you. But listen, as the coroner will tell you, you can't tell what order the shots came in. Every police officer who takes the stand will tell you that even a person facing away from you can still be a deadly threat if the person turns and points the gun.
Sorry, I'm curious. Why does it matter what order the shots happened in if they were all to his back?
Every single police officer who takes the stand is going to tell you that. Why? Because in a split second, a person can make that slight turn and point that gun at you. What they didn't tell you, what Mr. Merkel did not tell you, is that those 6 shots in the back are in fact consistent with what Jason tells investigators.
I bet it
You'll
is
recall
after 30
an
days.
activity.
Excuse me, Your Honor. We approach.
And take that fucking sign down.
You may continue.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. You'll recall an activity that Mr. Collins had you participate in with the laser pointer. The coroner is going to testify that the wounds Mr. Goodson received are consistent, even though they are through the back with someone and turning. That the wounds are consistent, even though they are from the back with what Jason tells investigators. That's what the coroner is going to testify to. That is what the evidence will show.
I bet
You're
everything
going to hear
he
about
can get it 30
studies.
days later.
on how quickly a person is able to turn.
Oh, he's
Pay
a power
attention to
user.
those studies. The judge is going to tell you how to judge the reasonableness. That it must be judged through the perspective of a reasonable police officer on the scene, standing in Jason's shoes, not with 20/20 hindsight. Those jury instructions won't tell you, look at cover, look at concealment, look at what Mr. Meade should have done, or could have done, or would have done. There will be no Monday morning quarterbacking that goes on in this case. He is going to tell you that the determination of reasonableness must allow for the fact that police officers are often forced to make split-second decisions in circumstances that are often rapidly evolving, tense, and uncertain. I hate to break it to the government, but if it were me or it were you, the judge would not give you that instruction. That instruction that the calculus of reasonableness must take into the fact that police officers are forced to deal in circumstances that are rapidly evolving, tense, and uncertain, are specific and is special to police officers. That is the law here we're dealing with, as the judge will tell you. The evidence will show that's exactly what we have here. A situation that is rapidly evolving, that it is tense, and it is uncertain. But the evidence will show that one thing was for certain, that Mr. Goodson had a semi-automatic handgun with an extended magazine. How do we know that is for certain? Because it was recovered on the scene. We know that the evidence will show one thing for certain, that had he not seen the gun, he would not have fired. You're going to hear expert testimony. You're going to hear it from a real life expert who has been in law enforcement longer than I've been alive. His name is Jim Scanlon. He's going to walk you through why Jason's decision to use deadly force is reasonable and in accordance with nationally accepted police practices. Jim was on SWAT. He's trained both nationally and internationally. But most importantly, he was a police officer here in this state. He knows Ohio's laws. He went through Ohio's police academy. You'll hear from the state's so-called expert too. He's a man by the name of Seth Stoughton, who's maybe been a police officer for 5 years and certainly never certified in this state to enforce the laws. In fact, he'll come in this courtroom and tell you that he doesn't even know the laws here in Ohio. Pay attention as you listen to that, as we point that out when you're evaluating these expert witnesses on what it means to be a reasonable use of deadly force. You're going to hear the accounts that I just gave you is corroborated. What Jason says to investigators that happened that day isn't just what Jason said. Make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen. The evidence will show that that statement is corroborated by physical evidence, by witness testimony. The state's own witnesses are going to tell you and corroborate what it is that I just told you what happened. You'll hear from Ryan Rosser. He was second in the door with Jason. He's approaching rapidly behind Jason. Now, Mr. Merkel told you that Ryan Rosser is going to say that he heard shots before he heard commands. Pay attention, ladies and gentlemen, to Ryan Rosser's statement. He's going to take the stand and he is going to tell you that's not what happened. He's going to tell you that he heard commands to drop the gun and then he heard the shots. You'll hear him tell you where they located the gun on Mr. Goodson's person, right underneath Mr. Goodson. As soon as they approached him, he was in the entrance of that doorway. You'll hear from Joseph Yorkowitz, another team member. He was third in the door with Jason. You'll hear how he was terrified. He had never been on something like this before. But most importantly, you'll hear Joseph Yorkowitz tell you and corroborate what it is that Jason tells investigators, because Joseph Yorkowitz is going to tell you that the driver of the Nissan Versa runs as fast as any human can run toward a house that we didn't know who lived in there. You'll hear from a neighbor, whether her testimony from a prior hearing is read or whether she is live and in the flesh on that witness stand. You'll hear from the neighbor who we have to call, and that neighbor corroborates the same thing Jason tells investigators and the same thing Rosser will tell you, that she heard commands, that she heard him identify himself as a law enforcement officer, and then she heard the shots.
Oh, the one that was.
Why doesn't the government want you to hear that information? Well, because she too corroborates
I remember that neighbor.
independently what Jason tells investigators. You'll see physical evidence that confirms what Jason says. Of course, he didn't know that St. Matthias had 2 working cameras. He tells investigators he did a U-turn. You saw that U-turn on that camera.
But he said he was
He had
looking
it
at cars and the
watched.
cars wasn't there.
He stopped at Rosser's car. That is confirmed. Why did he do that U-turn? Because he saw Mr. Goodson pointing a gun. You will hear from a biomechanics expert, Dr. DeMullen.
You
He
remember?
studies human movement for a living. He does a shooting reconstruction. And he will explain to you that the trajectories are consistent with what Jason tells investigators happened.
I bet
That
they
the
are.
most likely position, not talking more likely than not, that the most likely.
Y'all know what? I think this is now the first time ever that we've heard defense not hone in on the fact that by training, officers are supposed to complete their report and make their report as soon as they possibly can while everything is fresh in their mind. And this is the first time probably ever that I've heard in about 12 years of watching trials that they're encouraging that this officer take his word for it, even though he waited 30 days after this man was gone to even make a statement. And they waited 364 days from this man being gone before they ever even arrested him.
Position of Mr. Goodson was outside that door, exactly as Jason describes to investigators. You'll see pictures of an empty right-handed holster buried underneath clothing. Underwear, shorts, jeans, a t-shirt, a hoodie. Look at the holster. The holster has no blood on it because it was buried under layers of clothing. You'll see a photo of the gun that was recovered on Mr. Goodson. That gun has blood on it.
As he fell on the
Because
floor
it
and
wasn't
kicked away from him. You
by the
fucking-
layers of clothing.
Okay.
It wasn't in the holster, as the evidence will show. You will hear multiple first responders tell you where the gun was when they approached Mr. Goodson. You will hear that there's physical evidence consistent with what Jason tells the investigators, in that Mr. Merkel told you that Jason tells investigators he was inside the gate. He doesn't tell investigators that he was inside the gate. He tells investigators, I stopped a few feet outside the gate. Why don't they want you to know that? Because there's physical evidence of the ejected bullets, the casings from the bullets that are found outside the gate. You will hear from a gun expert who will tell you about the ejection pattern of MEADE's service rifle, of Jason's service rifle, that when they eject, they come out to the right. And they are found outside of the gate, which again is consistent with what Jason tells investigators. Again, the coroner, you're gonna hear that the coroner is going to testify that the wounds are consistent with what Jason tells investigators. But the government doesn't tell you all of this. Why not? Why doesn't the government want you to know that the coroner is going to say these things? Well, the evidence will show that it doesn't align with their theory. You're going to see photos, and they are hard to look at. At the end of this trial, the question will not be whether Mr. Goodson's death was tragic. It was. We know it was. Now, Mr. Merkel spent a lot of time talking about he was going in the house with a gun, which is what Jason says on a body-worn camera. But again, what Mr. Merkel didn't tell you, as you'll see for yourselves on the video when they play that body-worn camera, what he didn't tell you was the question that Jason was responding to. How did I miss the call? What he didn't tell you was that Jason was doing a million things at once, and you will see him doing a million things at once, trying to direct the medics, trying to make sure a path was cleared for the medics so that they could safely and securely get into the home, answering questions of a million different people, trying to keep the family at bay. You will see that on body-worn camera. You'll see the statement that he writes to investigators.
So which hand? The third hand?
Jason is a Marine, a law enforcement officer, a trained eye. When duty calls for service, when a crime is being committed, he responds as he has been trained to do. And in that process of responding to a crime, he is allowed to defend himself. The evidence will show that had you not seen that semi-automatic handgun, you never would have fired. I told you that December 4th, 2020 was a rapidly evolving day. It was tense. It was uncertain. But the one thing that was for certain on December 4th, 2020 was that Jason saw Mr. Goodson point a gun.
And only Jason.
Point a gun at the intersection
Not the camera.
of Carl and Ferris.
Not anybody else.
He saw the gun with the extended magazine
Nobody
while he
saw
was at
this
the
but
intersection
Jason.
of Salem Estates. He saw Mr. Goodson look at him and
He
take
used
off
himself
into a house.
Keisha.
And he saw the gun be pointed at him as Mr. Goodson, for whatever reason, turned and pointed that gun at Jason. In response to the deadly threat, Jason fired his service rifle one time, as the evidence will show that the law permits him to do.
After
The evidence will show that Jason was dealing with an armed person
shoot him one
who
time.
did not drop the gun and for whatever reason pointed the gun at Jason. At the end of trial, we will have met our burden because we will have shown you by a preponderance of the evidence, a featherweight more than 50%, that Jason believed he was about to be shot on December 4th, 2020. And we will have proven to you by a preponderance of the evidence, a featherweight more than 50%, that his decision to respond to a deadly threat with deadly force was in fact reasonable. Standing in the shoes of Jason Meade from the eyes of a reasonable police officer, from the perspective of a reasonable police officer standing in Jason's shoes as he experienced everything on December 4th of 2020. Because the evidence will show that an immediate threat to the officer or others of serious physical harm or death will permit him to respond with deadly force.
He turned it.
The evidence will show that Jason Meade was justified.
Auto. So yes,
justified tragedy.
Shooting out bullets until he let go.
As such, at the end of the trial, my partner, Mr. Collins, will come before you and ask that you find the only verdict that justice demands here. And that is that Jason Meade is not guilty of both counts. I thank you for your time.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our lunch recess. Do not discuss this case among yourselves. Do not permit anyone to discuss it with you or in your presence. It is your duty not to form or express an opinion on the case until it's finally submitted to you. When do you want them to come back?
115 downstairs.
Well, do you want them up here? Okay. Be back about 1:15, and I don't know when the bus is coming, but I think it's supposed to come at 1:30. Can we approach them? Yeah.
Okay. All right, guys. So that is our introduction to the retrial of Ohio versus disgraced officer Meade, murderer Meade, in the unaliving of Casey Goodson Jr. So, like I said, there was one day of testimony, which was Friday, which was mainly the occupants of the home, the family members that were in the home that day. And we know that from the body cam footage and things of that nature, they were definitely cursing at the people in the home, threatening the grandmother, all kinds of things, trying to take their phones. It was just absolute chaos. So And we know that on Friday, the defense attempted to get a mistrial based off of the fact that when his sister Janae took the stand, or when Casey Goodson's sister Janae took the stand after the emotional testimony, she got down off the stand, and as she was exiting into the gallery, she was hugged by her mother, Casey's mother, and they swore up and down that tainted the jury. So they tried to have the case thrown out. So again, we are currently in a final destination case in Florida, doing a part 2 of a series that we had already started. I will do my best to keep my eye on what is happening on a high level of what's happening in this particular courtroom, because this deserves to be talked about more, but then the other situations that may be overshadowing it at this point. So if you guys could do me a favor, and if you see this case, share this case. If you see a clip, share the clip. Again, I don't care what side of the conversation you're on. I just care that the conversation is happening. So what we'll do is that's it for today. Mom? Yes, Denver. I want cookies. You want cookies? Mm-hmm. So that is it for this Sunday. Thanks for having coffee and conversation with me. For those that are normally watching court with me, we'll be live on Twitch tomorrow morning for, you want to say hi? No. We'll be back first thing in the morning. What is it, like 6 in the morning? They're going to start Jesus Christ in Florida to finish or to continue with Florida versus Chance, Gathright, Murphy, and Murphy DP case in the unaliving of Julio, and we'll keep an eye on high level on this case as well. Thanks for joining me this morning. You guys have a good one.